All right, so we're finally doing this. Now, one of the issues I had with deciding how to approach this was whether to just react to the documentary itself, which I think will be fully contained within Gothic's existing reaction video, which I'd seen before. It's just I saw it when it came out, and that was like 3 years ago. So I remember some of it, but I don't remember all of it. Uh, so today I decided, just because it'll give me more to potentially talk about, we're going to do a bit of a reactception by reacting to someone reacting to the original documentary. In general, I don't agree with everything Gothic says, but I think she has a relatively good head on her shoulders. So let's see what exactly we're working with today. I picked this topic, though, by the way, because it riffs off of what I said in my previous video about how the Marxists are trying to destroy the American Indian identity, right, for their own ideological purposes. Evil shit. But something we shouldn't be surprised by. They didn't just attack the Native American identity. They're attacking Asian American identity. They're attacking, Hispanic American identity. They're attacking white American identity, and they're attacking black American identities for various different reasons. A lot of the animosity that different groups have in the United States comes from basically Marxist subversive identity politics. I think most of us are aware of this on some degree. But yeah, so that's more or less what I'm going to be focusing on regarding content here. So this is a 45-minute reaction video. Hopefully this doesn't turn into a 3-hour commentary. Well, we'll see, right?
What's up, everyone? My name is Gothix, and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be reacting to something that was published in 1954, and the title of it is The Secret of Selling to the Negro. Now, in case you're wondering why I would ever choose to react to such a horrendous...
It seems like, again, my microphone is still fucking picking up even though it's not going to come out in the audio, still fucking picking up the video itself. But yeah. Pay attention to, and you know what, maybe I'll react to a video on Katanga too, because I really want to shed light on like Katanga as like a historic, is like, I love the United States, I love America, but I think Katanga was one of our historical failures where we really could have supported who would have been a great ally to us, but then for optics reasons we decided nah. And I hope Katanga can one day be as great as it dreamed to be, but that's neither here nor there for this conversation. But yeah, the reason I brought this up is because I think that like there is a value to old documentaries like the one we're talking about right now. Okay, it doesn't seem to be in here. The value for watching old documentaries is it gives you an insight as to where the people were in a given subject matter, right? And since right now we're talking about again, selling to the Negro, right? We're gonna see how things have changed in the black community from then to now. And I remember Gothix had a lot to say about that subject in particular, and I suspect I can add on sub-commentary, so literally commentary about commentary, to commentary of commentary to this particular video. So just forward, just it's the same reason why I sometimes react to Leaflet and Kirsha, right? I think I can add to their commentaries. So let's continue. Where is
thing? I wanted to do this because I need to emphasize the importance of individuality. Look around you. Things are pretty chaotic, and one of the main factors that is causing all of this, godlessness being one, but the second is that people are so fixated on their own identity. But the ironic part about that is when you focus on something superficial like your skin color in this case, or your sexuality, your gender, when you focus on something like that, inevitably you're going to start thinking as a hive mind, as a giant machine. And the dangers to that is so severe I cannot even begin to explain it. But once you begin to think and behave as a collective, rest assured someone is going to be studying the collective. Someone's going to realize, black people, gay people, women, they all wear their identity on their sleeve and they all sort of move in unison, and we can kind of predict what they're going to do next. And this is exactly what this video is going to cover. So this is a marketing video, and it's, as I said, it's teaching people how to sell to the Negro. So
okay, so right off the bat, she's not wrong. This hive mind mentality is class consciousness, right? Like, your identity isn't an individual human being that is unrepeatable throughout space and time, right? Rather, you are an extension of some kind of metaphysical entity which is comprised of multiple human beings into one singular thing, right? And this is the danger of class consciousness, is it turns man from an individual whose life is self-justifying into a cell in a larger body. Right, it's kind of hard to explain where class consciousness comes from, or these class identities come from, without recourse to some kind of metaphysical substrate, which they will say is not necessary because they're allegedly materialist, right? But like, there is no material, identity, no material reality to these classes, right? These are very clearly formal. Formal categories, literally, as in like Platonic forms, right? Idea is, the word where we get the word idea in English, right, is idea. It's the Greek word for form in the Platonic tradition, instead of, hylos. No, that's matter. It's morphe, my bad, morphe. Morphe, which is the Greek word for form in the Aristotelian tradition. So, effectively, the difference here is that in the Platonic tradition, the idea, the form, is an abstract idea that exists in transcendental reality, outside of time and space, not invented by the minds of man, but discovered by the minds of man through its information, informing the material reality of the world around us, right? So it's like all entities participate in forms, but those forms are abstract ideas which come and precede the material reality. Now, the Aristotelian concept is that forms are simply natures, right? They are the nature of something. They're not some abstract idea. The form is, that which just makes a thing what it is. So it doesn't exist before the entity. It exists within the entity itself, right? It's a form. It's a sort of informational nature. And it is kind of hard to justify, and and to a certain extent, people know this, right? It's very clearly, again, as I've been saying, a religion pretending to be some kind of secular science, right? But this whole class identity thing is the basis of conflict theory as well, which was effectively a sociological theory which springboards off of Marxian ideas, right? Marx's ideas. His whole class conflict becomes eventually conflict theory in sociology. And yeah, so again, the issue is like, you are not some cell in a larger superorganism that, consists of, let's say, some collection of human beings unified by some abstract, category we're discussing here, right? You are, fundamentally speaking, an individual living entity, right? Before, even removed any group, right? Let's say, hypothetically speaking, you were to remove someone. We've had this occur in history, right? It's not a good thing that this has happened, but we've had endlings within certain cultures as well, like the last of their, peoples. They still persist without the collective. It's not a good thing, but it is just objectively the case, where the individual is capable of surviving without the group, but the group is not capable of surviving without individuals. There's primacy to the individual, not the collective. And the issue that has been described here, where it's like, it's not godlessness per se that is the problem, because there are certain atheist groups that don't have a lot of the problems that we're talking about, right? That actually somehow seem to fully just get around these issues. But there's a thing that, and there are some God, allegedly religious people who buy into all this shit too, right? So God is not himself like, the linchpin to this chaos. There has to be something that unifies these groups. And there is actually a very specific thing that the people who are causing this chaos have in common, but the people that they lack, and the people who are trying to maintain order, maintain. And that would be the people who are causing all this conflict, all these conflict theorists out there, right? All these radical feminists, all these critical race theorists, all these queer theorists, fat studies people, all these animal, what would you call it? Like anti-speciesism people, all of these groups, right? The Marxists, even on the dialectical right, quote unquote, right? Like let's say the alleged Nazis and the fascists supposedly being on the right, right? Even though, again, I've made my opinion about like the left-right dichotomy not making sense in American political discourse, unless right just means anti-Marxist. But yeah, even on the dialectical right, they make this exact same problem. And the problem is that they have a primacy of consciousness, not a primacy of reality. Their idea precedes the real. If the real comes into conflict with the idea, they choose the idea, not the real. Okay? Whereas, again, the objectivist, and then you have like the Thomist, they place primacy not on the ideas, but on reality. And in fact, here's the thing. A quick way to test this is to ask yourself the question, which one is primary to the other? Does reality precede truth, or does truth precede reality? That may sound like a ridiculous question, but there is an actual answer to this. And the reason why is because reality is about being. What is real is that which actually is, right? We're talking about ontology here. We're talking about that which actually is versus is not. When we're talking about truth, we are talking about the recognition, like the informational aspect. So reality, being itself, precedes truth. And you can see that like in a lot of these dialectical movements, right? Many of them will say, well, obviously, like abandon truth altogether, but they're precursors. Put truth before reality. As in, the conception precedes being itself, which doesn't make any sense, because if the conception precedes being, it wouldn't exist because it doesn't participate in being. And this is actually what gives us the definition for truth to work with, right? Truth is not the same as reality. Truth is rather that which corresponds to reality, just to like properly organize these things, right? And if you have the idea of the primacy of consciousness, right? And most people don't think they have this, but you could see it in their workings, right? For example, you had, basically all the Hegelian traditions have the primacy of consciousness, right? They have the enlightened idea that, isn't scientifically testable, and it wouldn't even need to be scientifically testable because it supersedes, it's better than your empirical knowledge, right? All of them have the same primacy of consciousness error. But you have this in the mystical element too, right? The mystic is often someone who abides by the primacy of consciousness, right? The experience that they have, whether it be religious or sometimes even the mystic experience, and oftentimes experience in entheogen usage. So these are drugs that create a pseudo-religious experience, right? Oftentimes you have the person putting the experience as primary over what actually is. Again, that's dangerous because your experience is just phenomenological. It's what's going on in your head, right? You have to double check it against what actually is in reality, no matter how intense or affirming it or true it may seem. It still has to, in order to be true, conform to reality. So it has to be tested against reality and being. But yeah, the rationalist in general places being prior to truth, because again, just hierarchically, being must precede knowing. right? So it is really that simple. So in the Thomistic tradition, right, God isn't necessarily, God is truth, and that his knowledge is his being, right? The two are not separable. But again, the being, it's because there are no distinct properties in God within Thomism. Anyway, well, this is a subject for a different topic later, right? I just wanted to clear up that, like, again, it's not necessarily a religion versus atheism thing, because again, atheists who put the primacy of reality as their foundational principle don't seem to have these issues. But a lot of these people who are atheist plus, if you remember the new atheist movement, right? It became the atheist plus movement. A lot of the new atheists and the atheist plus still incorporated from the religious mystical traditions and from the Marxist tradition, that primacy of consciousness. We have the idea, it doesn't matter what any kind of what reality says. If it contradicts what we know, then it's not true. So yeah, just put that out there, right? Because again, we need to be honest about what we're dealing with.
I hope you enjoy this, and let me remind you guys, hit that like and subscribe button if you do, because YouTube does not like my videos. All right, let's get into this.
Hello, I'm Bob Trout.
Hi, Bob.
I've got a story here that I think is big.
How big?
Really big.
Oh.
Because it's bound to have a terrific impact on business. I'm talking about a new market, a big new market. Millions upon millions of new prospects with $15 billion to spend. That's right.
That's a lot of money.
Right, I said 15 billion. That's a lot of money, isn't it? The surprising thing is that it's a
I mean, I technically did pre-watch, but I did not remember that that was coming.
fresh market, still full of opportunities. It grew up so fast, got so big in a hurry, that few of us realize its scope. Now, these days, nobody's likely to pass up chances to sell. And yet right here in our own front yard, there's a neglected market. There's money waiting to be spent. To get the story of this market, to be able to tell you the secret of selling the Negro, we did a lot of digging. We talked to leading businessmen, the customers, and the salesmen. We went to Washington, D.C. We set up cameras and other key points around the nation. And out of this all, there emerged a story, the story of a new market.
Okay, so really quickly, as I said, this was filmed back in 1954, and they didn't have social media back then. There were no smartphones, none of that. All they had was television, radio, newspaper, and word of mouth. So by simply observing, they were able to essentially build a consumer profile for Black people. Imagine how easy it is today to predict how Black Americans will react.
Yes, this is the market.
Well, this is just market research, right? Like, obviously, if you're gonna if you're gonna provide a product, you need to do some. Is my okay? Sorry, I thought my avatar may have been borking out for a moment, but this is just basic market research, right? You need to know your customer in order to adequately serve them, right? You need to actually have a product that they need, that they want or need, and so you need to have that. Because ultimately business is some kind of service, right? Like, you're trying to provide something for someone else. So they have to, again, need what you're selling or want what you're selling. And you have to, again, serve them, right? Obviously, this is most obvious in, if you have to do any kind of, direct customer interaction. But, if you're selling a shitty product, right, then you're not servicing your customer very well. And, obviously, some people will buy the shitty product, right? But your reputation will end up being built that you're selling a shitty product. And as a result, that is going to affect how, whether people go to you or to your competition, right? Especially if your competition is selling a better product of the same kind. So yeah, one of the interesting things I find about this is, again, when you remember that capitalism is about mutual service, right? The way that you make money under capitalism is you provide a good or a service, and providing goods itself is a service to another person, right? So I find it interesting that like back at this time period we're talking about like basically the question is how do we render service for our own mutual benefit to the black community, right? Because they benefit as a businessman by receiving money, right? Something that they can use for any other purpose, right? But think about it. Think about what money is. Money, depending on how you're like making it, represents different things. If you work an hourly job, then it represents your time, right? If you're working commission, it represents your productivity. That's why you don't get paid hourly. And that's why you get paid, per each job for like individually. If you're being paid like a salary, you're being paid for your availability, which is why you're not paid, whether or not you come into office, whether or not you're allowed to not go in a particular day, or you have to come in an extra day. It's why your pay doesn't change, because you're being paid for your availability. If you're being paid by a patron, then you're being paid simply to produce without any direct, directorship over your work, right? So it's like, that's exactly the function of like Patreon and Subscribestar, right? You pay someone in order to produce what they're already producing because you believe in their work. Every customer that you receive money from is giving you one of those things, normally speaking. Now, there may be other ways that people get paid, but those are the main ones, right? They're either giving you their time, their productivity, their availability, or their someone's belief in their work in order to gain something from you. So they're giving you something valuable and you're receiving something valuable in return. So there's a mutual service that happens under like a capitalist system that doesn't have to deal with things like, again, the government protecting corporations from, the consequences of their own actions through things like bailouts or, legal, scaffolding that makes it impossible for there to be competition to come into the market. These happen quite a lot with larger businesses, for example. So remember that when we're talking about like selling to the Negro here, we're literally talking about people going in and offering some degree of service to them that they think would be a benefit for them and therefore benefit them as well. So it's about aligning mutual self-interests. Okay, here we go.
We're talking about the new Negro family. Their name is Wells or Wilson, Smith or Brown or Alexander or Breen.
You mean black people get married? What? I love seeing this. People get upset when I say that there is a big problem with fatherlessness in the black community. There's a big problem with fathers being absent of any type of community, but for black people, it is a huge problem, a big problem, especially if you look at culture as a whole. We're sort of encouraging this hookup culture, and I think that this is beautiful, and this is so stable, but no, we don't get that. We got baby mama drama, one night stands, and swiping right.
They live in Chicago, in Atlanta, or New York.
All right, so this is one of the things that I was waiting for her to get to was the strength of the black family. Now, the thing is that the culture, like, again, black American culture has changed significantly from the 50s to now, right? There used to be a time where, again, this was the primary norm of the black community, right? The same as like the white community. You would have a mother and a father who are married, and they would have children, and then those children would grow up in a household with a mother and a father, because it turns out children need their mother and their father. Who would have fucking guessed, right? But okay, that being said, then you have to ask the question, how exactly did we go from the stable arrangement as depicted here? Because you got to remember, these documentaries are trying to depict something to teach their salesmen that they're trying to train what to expect, right? So this is something that, again, they are being trained to expect. Why? Because this is what their market research has shown. And you have to ask, okay, so what exactly happened to destroy this? And the answer is straight up, it was leftism. Leftism came in, and because you got to remember, if you're self-sufficient, you're not necessarily going to be so eager to give everything that you worked hard for to the government, right? But if you can destroy the family, right? If you can estrange a man from his children, get him to pay, child support instead of being involved in the child's life, and then you can also get, a single mother or a struggling, mom or a struggling family on welfare, then you can create a class of welfare parasites, because, then you literally survive off of a need benefits from the government that are taken from other people. You incentivize the promotion of theft, because yes, taxation is theft, but you incentivize the promotion of theft as a moral system in guise of charity, right? Because it's going to help people. It's not given out of compassion. It is stealing from Peter to give to Paul. Yeah. So there was that, and she mentioned the whole thing about, again, the welfare state. The welfare state is the largest drain in many respects on our federal budget, right? So much money goes into it. Now we know that a lot of it is probably embezzled, to be perfectly honest. A lot of it is almost certainly eaten up by fraud, as we've seen recently with Tyler Oliveira and Nick Shirley, by the way, right? But the reason why the left wants to promote welfare parasitism among various communities is actually very simple. Again, because if you depend on the government now, then the government itself becomes part of like the culture, in that it is essentially the force and source of your prosperity, of whatever prosperity you can get, right? So it makes people dependent on the government, because if you can get without really putting into, then a lot of people will take that, because let's be fair, most people are fundamentally lazy in the way that they are. It doesn't matter what group you're in. Most people are just fundamentally lazy. If you can, again, get someone dependent on the government, then why wouldn't communism look possibly more inviting, right? Why wouldn't more look inviting, right? I mean, the government can already provide you this. Why can't it provide you just a little bit more? Make life a little bit more comfortable instead of uncomfortable, right? And so we get this whole issue of the taxes will always keep rising, because these people will always, the people on the welfare state will always vote for more Gibbs. So it gives the whole purpose of breaking up the black family was to create a permanent underclass of voters that they could manipulate for their, to achieve their own purposes. It is diabolical, to be perfectly honest.
In Detroit, St. Louis, Los Angeles, any one of 1,000 cities and towns. All over the country, families such as this are enjoying new prosperity. They have new interests, new standards of living, a buying power they've never...
Look at that. Look at that. You see this? None of them are twerking. They're doing laundry. I know I'm going to get someone in the comments. I can twerk and do laundry. That's not the point. Twerking, you'll see none of that here.
never enjoyed before. There are good prospects for practically all types of goods and services.
I'm thinking about it right now. I think the underlying point she's actually making here, I think, is actually a pretty good one. Is that, like, these people respect themselves, right? They carry themselves as if they respect themselves, because fundamentally speaking, they actually do. They have like a degree of, they have a higher value for themselves than just an object to be displayed for entertainment purposes, right? Which is, to be fair, what I think she's criticizing earlier. I think that would be like the strongest way to articulate that. Is that one of these cultures that we're talking about here, this one that we're looking at right now, is a culture of self-respect and virtue, right? Whereas the other one is one of performance, but offers no real eudaimonia, right? No real good-spiritedness, right? No genuine happiness that is provided from, again, a life of, stable virtue, right?
Too often, though, they're overlooked prospects. Why? Because of some good, valid reason? No. They're overlooked because of mistaken ideas, because of out-of-date ideas about how the Negro lives and how he buys. The truth of the matter is that the Negro lives pretty much the same as other folks. He buys pretty much the same way, too. But just the same, a lot of old doubts and opinions keep cropping up over and over again.
I don't like to do business with Negroes. They're drifters. You can't keep track of them.
Yes, although a lot of people think that way, the truth is that 1 out of every 3 Negro families living in cities today owns its own home. That figure comes directly from the United States Bureau of Census.
Maybe so, but Negroes are poor credit risks.
Not more of a credit risk than any other group. Actually, the Negro homebuyer meets his payments faithfully, often more faithfully than other race groups in the same economic level.
Oh, man, I love this. Okay, a few things I want to point out. They're reenacting how a business owner wouldn't want to sell to the Negro because of outdated ideas. So, again, 1950s, we're talking about Jim Crow, overt racism, stuff like that. Which, by the way, you should check out my reaction video to the Uncle Tom 2 documentary, and you should go watch that because it covers a lot of misconceptions about the civil rights movement. Go check it out. But in any case, there was a lot of outdated ideas about black people back then. And I find it so interesting that despite all of these stereotypes that black people had to deal with, they were more financially stable, they had better credit, they had complete households for the most part. Yet today, when someone has a stereotype about a black person, the initial reaction is to complain instead of just proving yourself. Because if a stereotype is truly something that hurts your feelings, the best remedy for that, in my opinion, is to prove them wrong. And you prove them wrong not by screaming at the top of your lungs, "Stop stereotyping me, that's racist." You prove them wrong by doing exactly what these people were doing. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out about what he just said was the fact that back then, black people were more financially responsible. Today, by and large, okay, I know there's lots of successful black people, but if we're looking at the broader picture, black Americans, and you can look this up, spend less on credit maintenance and more on visible goods. So what this means is that black people, they spend less time building their credit, less time investing, less time opening up savings accounts, and instead they spend more of their time buying fancy jewelry, expensive cars, constant trips to the beauty salon to get their fake nails and all that stuff, unnecessary things compared to back then. So naturally, you're going to see a lot more poverty in the black community today if we have a culture that is encouraging that behavior. And you don't even have to go far. Just look at, again, if we're speaking at in terms of black culture, what is the dominant mainstream black culture that we see? All these rappers and hip hop artists that are flaunting their jewelry. There's one rapper with a diamond implant in the middle of his head. Why? Tell me why. What could have that money been used for? Sure, you can say, oh, it's my money, I can do what I want. But again, this does not negate the fact that black people back then were more financially responsible than they are today.
That's the
Okay, so I do have a couple thoughts here. So I like the fact that she brought that up, because one of the things that I think we need to get through our heads at times is that just as like laws and economics are not distinct from morals, right? They're not distinct from ethics. Ultimately speaking, your laws and your economic policies are going to reflect your moral, disposition and your ethical principles, right? And it's interesting that she brought up again like the fucking diamond implant, which is really weird. I'm not a big body modification person myself, but one of the things that comes to mind is, again, it's completely superficial. Like all the essential components would be things like, again, cultivating your virtue, would be things like finding a wife, finding something to like dedicate, to actual like some kind of mission, right? Something to like channel your creative power into, right? Uh, whether it be a saint or some kind of like Randian hero, or even just like a traditional family man, right? Or even if it's like, genuinely speaking, an artist who actually has a benevolent view of the world to concretize, these people are going to, again, portray themselves in a very different way than a hedonist is going to. Because the hedonist is not so much concerned with man as rational animal, right? Because that's the thing. The Randian hero, the saint, again, the loving, the stable family. These are all things that are concerned with man as rational animal, right? Man as something that can find find his happiness through understanding the world around him and living in accordance thereof, right? Because the happiness of man is not a means to an end; it is an end in itself. Eudaimonia does not provide, not eudaimonia. Hedonism does not provide eudaimonia. Oh my God, I'm stumbling on my words here. Hedonism, the virtue of hedonism is hedone, which is where we get the word hedonism from. But hedone can be, I guess you could describe it as like a experiential pleasure, right? That's ultimately ephemeral, cannot endure. Eudaimonia is more about like enduring, like, well-being. That's the thing that Aristotle placed supreme importance in the life of man on. And ultimately, it is kind of the basis of Ayn Rand's whole rational egoism, is its pursuit of man and his own happiness, right? That happiness is best translated into Greek as, in this case, eudaimonia. It's similar because Ayn Rand was a Aristotelian, just like Aquinas was. And Aquinas also places great importance on eudaimonia because they both come from the Aristotelian tradition. They're not hedonists. They do not hold hedone as the supreme value. In fact, actually, it's like we can see this, right? Hedone does not promote human flourishing, because you can look at, for example, a fentanyl user, right? Fentanyl produces a extreme rush of hedone, and yet it destroys people's lives, right? It is absolutely not conductive to the well-being of human beings. So while it may be a nice thing to occasionally have, right? Not fentanyl, but hedone, it's not something that is, it's not a goal in and of itself to orient your life around, right? It is just an experience in life that comes and goes, right? You should be looking for your eudaimonia, your good spirits, right? The change in the change in the content of your character that leads to long-term happiness. This is not what you see promoted in these superficial cultures, because these superficial cultures are all about appearances. They're all about, again, it's essentially hedonism. And this is why you see the collapse of these value systems, is because they're not really value systems at all. They're not rooted in reality. They're rooted in appearances. Again, it's that primacy of consciousness over primacy of reality type stuff. So, oh yeah, and one thing, they did mention that the black family at this time meets payments oftentimes more reliably than other families, because, and the reason why is actually kind of obvious, right? It's because ultimately speaking, to be in debt is to be at the service of someone else involuntarily, right? Debt slavery was the standard of slavery for much of human history, to be perfectly honest. And in fact, debt slavery was the thing the founding fathers were definitely very concerned with as a possibility for the nation. And debt is a thing that has collapsed many empires beforehand, and there's no reason that the United States is not susceptible to collapsing under its own debt if we don't get the debt issue under fucking control, right? Now, the whole world is trading in debt, and that's not going to be very good if we can't, like, rein it back in. But that's a thing for that's a thing for another time. I have a sneaking suspicion the reason why, again, the payments on time thing is important for this time period is the understanding, again, that debt is functionally slavery, right? It ultimately means that your works don't actually belong to you; they belong to another to whom you have to pay back.
Information we got from people who ought to know. The National Association of Real Estate Boards.
Well, maybe, but I've always heard that Negroes buy shoddy, poor quality merchandise.
No, it's just the other way around. According to leading researchers, in proportion to population and income, Negroes buy more quality products than any other comparable United States group. You see, there are a lot of confused notions about the Negro customer. But when you dig right down and find out about them, they just don't hold water. Negroes own homes. They meet their payments faithfully. They buy good brands of merchandise. So why let a lot of old-fashioned ideas hurt profits? Take a look at the real facts.
Yeah, so back then, as I said, black people were more financially responsible. They paid their bills on time. They owned houses. It seems like I can't go a single day without hearing about the housing crisis or how black people are always living in poverty. What changed? The culture changed. This guy also mentioned that Negroes love to buy expensive high-end products. Now, if I had to guess, I think it's a combination of two things. One, it could be someone who worked hard to achieve something and naturally they want to reward themselves by buying something that they like. Listen, I do the same thing. But I also think, which I think is going to be the bigger issue here that I'm assuming they might touch on later, is the fact that some people, a lot of people, like purchasing things to flaunt. It becomes something to buy, not for them, but for everyone else. And you see it all the time, especially with social media, people taking photos of them in their car or them wearing jewelry. And it's like, who is this for? Is this for you or is this for all of your followers? But let's continue and see what he says.
I mean, that is possible. Like in the former, right, obviously you have an aesthetic principle as well, right? If you're buying it if you're genuinely buying it for yourself, then you're probably buying it for the beauty of the thing in and of itself. Even if it's not like an obvious visual beauty, right? There are many different ways that beauty is expressed. And oftentimes, again, people buy beautiful things. As she said, sometimes it's a little narcissistic because they want something to flaunt. Yeah, fair enough. That's a thing people do, right? And yes, it can get you in trouble. But the buying of things that are high-end, things that are functional, actually functional in their purpose is not what we're referring to, because then that wouldn't necessarily be high-end, or at least hopefully you don't consider something actually doing its function high-end. But presumably we're talking something which is, again, beautiful in some way. Now, beauty actually does have an effect on your psychology, right? If you are surrounded by, we actually know this from hospitals, right? Hospitals have done research into how decor actually may or may not influence the recovery rates of patients. And what they did find actually was that hospitals that invested in beauty, that invested in beautiful paintings and that had beautiful architecture, things like this, they actually had the ability to participate with beauty, the human mind with beauty, found that the disposition of the patients was better, right? And since the disposition of the patients was better, it meant that a lot of patients because your disposition does affect your health, right? Many patients actually did better in hospitals which invested in beauty than not. So the human mind is interested in beauty, right? Beauty is a thing that's kind of important for the health of the human species, right? And yeah, so it's sometimes people buy things that they find to be beautiful, right? Put a smile on their face, right? And the reason why is pretty simple. Obviously, as I said, work hard. You get to buy the thing that you want because you worked hard. But also there's the investment of it actually enriches my life because, again, it provides beauty in my life, and beauty is intrinsically good, right? There is an intrinsic goodness in the beautiful. So not necessarily saying that it's the only trait that matters, right? But beauty is an intrinsically good quality. But then again, all intrinsically good qualities can be abused too, right? It's strength is an intrinsically good quality, and how many times is strength abused to the persecution of the weak, right? Knowledge is an intrinsically good property, but how often is knowledge abused to manipulate the people who are unknowledgeable? Yeah, so it's beauty can also be used for malicious ends, but beauty does have an actual benevolent function. It's not a morally neutral thing.
In Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, some amazing facts and figures about this new market have been uncovered. For a first-hand report, we would like to take you directly to the United States Department of Commerce to hear this story from the Secretary of Commerce himself. Here is the Honorable Sinclair Weeks, the Secretary of Commerce of the United States.
In the Department of Commerce, we are constantly alert to trends that mean a healthier national economy, better business for the nation as a whole. Recently, we have been interested in a rising young market, one that represents a huge potential for goods and services. I'm referring to the new Negro market. The tremendous buying power of this group is backed, of course, by an increased earning power. The average Negro family's income is at a record high. In fact, since 1939, it has increased more than the average income of all other Americans.
I want you to really think about that for a second. In a time where people said racism was so bad, they were able to somehow end up building successful lives for themselves despite living in the midst of all that. I think that there is something to be said about the lack of resilience with this current generation, as well as how much more invested Black people were back then to rid themselves of any of these outdated stereotypes. Back then, they led by example. If you're saying that Black people can't afford something, Black people live in poverty, then you know what? We're going to build our wealth. We're going to take up 1 job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs if we have to pay for this mortgage. We're going to do it. You're saying that we can't figure it out. We're going to figure it out. Today, you know what the solution is? Complain about it. Government, where's our assistance? Let me go march on the streets with my fist up in the air. Let me pull out my phone and show everyone how oppressed I am. Not to say that some people don't need help, but the majority of people, especially living in America, can do it. You just have to have that grit and that resilience. And I find that more people back then had that resilience.
Just take a look at a few figures.
I will say that this is true, but at the same time, it does neglect a couple of things that we need to pay attention to, such as, for example, there was obviously increases in regulation that make it more difficult, for example, to start small businesses, depending on where you live, right? Starting a small business in fucking New York or California is different than starting a small business in New Hampshire or Texas, right? Putting that out there, right? So one thing is, like, we have to consider the regional aspects of this. Like, let's not twist this. Like, the leftist definitely did, like, sabotage multiple minority populations in the United States to again engage in this identitarian conflict. Refer to what Margaret Sanger, for example, founder of Planned Parenthood, said about the Black people, and then consider the modern Black abortion rates, and it seems like she got exactly what she wanted, right? But it's not just that; it's also, again, the value, because at this point in time that we're talking about, there was value in again, success. But nowadays, the strength itself is demonized, and the reason why strength itself is demonized is because, again, this class conflict theory, the strong oppresses the weak, so therefore strength itself must be the bourgeoisie in the economic calculus of the intersectionalist, right? Weakness would be the proletariat, and so since the strong are the bourgeois, the weak are therefore the enlightened class. Short Phototaku actually had a video on this that was actually not that bad. I'll link it into the description if I can find it. I don't remember what the title was, but it was on the demonization of strength. Let me write that down, actually. Yeah, so there was it goes to what she's saying, that it's a value change, but it's a more insidious value change than most people think. It was an active, intentional, like, demonization of strength in and of itself. Because let's be fair, there is definitely a difference between like the Soviet socialist idea and the fucking woke ideal, right? There's definitely a difference. You can see one of them at least pretends to value strength, and the other one definitely does not. But yeah, I forgot where I was going with it.
Yes. An official Department of Commerce report shows that at least 1/3 of the Negroes living in cities earn from $2,000 to $5,000 a year. Today, the average Negro wage earner brings home a paycheck 4 times larger than the one he collected in 1939. As a whole,
You got to remember that this is at the time, so this is like 1959. I can probably do a inflation calculator. Here, hold on, that's not the button I was looking for. Okay, so let's go to an inflation calculator. Let's see. usinflationcalculator.com. Let's see, this is 19, I think it's at 1959. Said $2,000. So that would be, let's see. Okay, that's definitely not. If I wasn't pissed off beforehand, I am now, right? Oh my God. So usinflationcalculator.com, I don't know how reliable this is. But if this is correct, the cumulative rate of inflation from 1959 to today has been 1,023%. I'm not too happy with that, but it's also not all that surprising. So, long story short, the lower end of that is, let's see, $22,459.45. I'm not entirely sure that makes any sense given what we're talking about. It said 5,000 for the higher end. Numbers make my head hurt, chat, right? I'm like Kirscher this way. So, okay, yeah, 5,000 would be $56,148.63. So, yeah, decent chunk of change, right? Decent money, right?
all the Negro market has a total income of about $15 billion every year.
Again, since we're here with the inflation calculator already, let's see what the 15 billion actually. I'm gonna rage at this because of this damn inflation calculator, aren't I? 100,000 million billion. All right, let's experience some pain. I am definitely in substantial pain. Chat. Assuming this is 1959, that would mean that this $15 billion is roughly equivalent to $168,445,876,288.66. I'm trying so hard not to glow right now.
And after taxes, Negro families still have many billions of dollars to spend. Here is a buying power that cannot help but have a tremendous effect on our national economy and on business prosperity in general. When these dollars are spent for a wide range of goods, services, and employment, business everywhere is bound to feel the impact.
This new buying power has resulted in a class Negro market, a profitable, above-average income group of consumers. For example, the nation's largest newspaper and magazine research organization, Daniel Starch and staff, reports these significant figures. More than 51% of the readers of Ebony magazine have a record player in their homes. Almost 64% own a television set. And almost 78% enjoy the convenience of an electric refrigerator. It is also a fact and this is from the magazine The Food Field Reporter, that Negroes spend almost $3 billion a year for food alone. Per capita, they buy more cosmetics, drugs, and toiletries than anyone else in the country. And their children are better educated, too, because since 1930, enrollment in Negro colleges is up 2,500%. But really, to recognize the importance of this class Negro market, we must realize that something has been happening economically in our country.
All right, so I'm going to pause this here, right? Anyone else frustrated that, again, this was the thing that, like, was taken away from people, right? Just saying, right? You do not hate communists enough. You do not fucking hate people, the dialectic, anywhere near enough. Oh, I'm trying hard not to glow.
People are on the move. The population is shifting. The makeup of metropolitan populations today is different than it was just a few short years ago. To give you a better idea of what we mean, we set up several cameras, candid cameras, in a number of shopping locations. Take a look at these shoppers.
Look how classy everyone was dressing. Look at that. Look at it. There's nothing else to say.
Notice what a large...
As I look like this. All right, continue.
Honestly, I appreciate the humorous self-awareness, right? But yeah, again, it has to do with, like, again, whether or not respect for yourself and respect for others is actually a value of that particular society, right? Because you could be a highly individualistic society and still value respect for yourself and respect for others, right? In fact, that's the only real way that you could have a highly individualized society, right? But
proportion of them are Negroes. What's the reason? It's simply this. Negro families are moving into the cities where there are more job opportunities. Here they find occupations with more prestige and security, jobs that pay more money. As a result, Negro families today often make up the largest part of central city consumer prospects. A shoe store in Chicago's Loop, for example, reports that more than 50% of its customers are Negroes. In another case, a drugstore located at a transfer point in a non-Negro neighborhood finds that its Negro customers total 25%. The trend is plain. The new Negro families today are moving into more populated areas, to the cities, where there are more stores, more buying opportunities.
again, it's not just more stores and more buying opportunities, it's also more job opportunities, more opportunities to, like, again, mutually benefit through a relation with another person, which is the basis of capitalism, right? Again, the employer and the employee have a mutualistic relationship. They both benefit the most when they are operating under each other, you know, when they're like both gaining from mutual self-interest. So yeah, there's that.
1940, in San Francisco alone, the Negro market has increased by 89%.
Wow.
In Chicago, by 81%.
I just had a thought in my head that it popped in my head, then it dropped out, then it just popped in my head again. So another thing is that, like, at this time, obviously, you would have areas that would not service the Negro because of racism and all that whatnot. But here we're seeing like an economic pushback. This isn't a liberal pushback. This is an economic argument for serving the Negro customer, right? And this is why it's like, even if you allow for people to segregate their businesses, the ones who actually don't segregate their businesses for moral reasons, i.e., you know, not for some like outlandish moral bullshittery that someone's doing, right? The right to refuse service to anyone, you know, get the fuck out of the door if you're gonna cry about it's ma'am, okay, right? Not that kind of shit, but like actually, like, you know, doesn't really matter like if you're like again white or Hispanic or black, because if you exclude one of those populations, you end up losing out on their customership. Now, in a high trust society, or even a moderately trusted society, kind of like this right here, that is actually a detriment to you because you're losing out on so much material. Now, if you live in a society that's actively at war with itself, right, where it's like you got two different groups that can't get along, and then it's actively physically disruptive to business, then it does make sense to potentially refuse service to an entire group. This does not seem to have been the case in this time period. And you see that again, that just basic economics is already solving issues that people had, again, about superficial judgments, right? Because are you going to choose your racism, or are you going to choose the money, right? Right? It's like, are you going to choose to deny service to all of these customers, or do you want to make more money, right? Because if you, and here we have a trade-off for the genuine racist, right? Because like, if you don't want the money, if you don't want to serve the customer, then you're going to lose out on money, and then the person down the road who does the same thing that you do and accepts both customer types, he's going to end up making that money that you couldn't have made, and it's going to end up being a long-term detriment to yourself. But also, again, we got to remember, the reason I brought all this up was the, again, pay attention to how different it is from then to now in this particular community. This was by design. I'll look up the quote that comes, that I'm thinking of, I can't remember off the top of my head. But all of this damage that was done to this community was entirely intended. It did not have to go this way. We already saw a vision of what was possible, and that was taken away through, again, propaganda and through subversion. And they're trying to do this to everyone, to destroy any capacity we have for, again, a functional society, because the wokeists, you know, they take from Mao and they take from Lenin. And Lenin's idea is that of the perpetual revolution. The idea that there is no end state, there is only ever revolution unending. And that should be really worrying to you, and it should be a reason for you to care about all of this shit.
Houston, Texas, 45%. Philadelphia, 50%. The impact of this new buying force is so tremendous that actually in 14 major United States markets, a product cannot be number one without Negro support. A product must have the backing of this big new buying power to be a leader in the field. What do you have to sell? Chewing gum or cars? Toothpaste or transportation? Whatever it is, here are millions of prospects. And these prospects are everywhere. Negro customers can no longer be pigeonholed. They cannot be classified as prospects who trade only in certain stores, certain neighborhoods. Today, Negroes shop downtown. They shop in supermarkets. They shop in small neighborhood stores. They'll buy from anyone who wants to sell to them. But we all know that before you can sell to customers, you've got to get to know them. You must understand something about them. What do the Negro customers buy? Why do they buy? How do you sell to them? Let's find out. Let's hear the opinion of men who have spent a lifetime studying the buying habits of customers the world over. Here is what sales psychologists have to say about selling to the Negro.
The secret of selling to the Negro is expressed in one word. That word is recognition. Now, there's nothing unusual about that.
Hold up. Our current culture has a huge problem with narcissism. And I think that social media made it a million times worse. But back then, when there was no such thing, there was still this desire to buy goods if it meant that you would get recognition from it. It's like rappers today that buy all the bling bling because it's a sign of status. People waiting in line for days to pick up the new Jordans. Look what I can afford. I was first in line to get this.
People want to be recognized. They need recognition. That's basic in all of us. But perhaps because he's had so little of it, the Negro needs even more.
So really quickly, this guy said that Everyone wants recognition. Yeah, it feels good to get recognition for something. Like when I wash the dishes and my husband says, "Hey, babe, thanks for doing the dishes." I'm like, "Oh, you're welcome." But you shouldn't strive for recognition. If you're really passionate about what you're doing, like for example, if you're passionate about building your wealth and buying a home or pursuing a certain career, recognition from other people won't even be a thought. You know, it's even unhealthy when we look at it from the perspective of a celebrity. A celebrity knows that they're going to get recognition if they're in a movie or they're, a musician. They're going to get that recognition, but you even see it with them, how they're always trying to fish for compliments. Like, recognize me. I'm the first black female to win this. I'm the first black man to be casted in this role. It's unhealthy. Some people also figure out that they can get recognition by acting belligerent, by being very toxic. A lot of people do that. Like I said, just look at the rappers right now who are rapping about shooting one another. That's not good, but hey, you got your recognition and then you got your status. Here's my gold chain. Like it's backwards. All right, let's continue.
He needs
Well, so I forgot to unmute myself. Well, so with the thing with the recognition through identity is all they're doing is they're playing the intersectional hierarchy game, right? And it's like, look at me, I'm these oppressed categories, and these oppressed categories are intrinsically valuable, so therefore me doing this thing as an oppressed is intrinsically like valuable. There's like no one really gives a shit, right? The only people who give a shit are intersectionalists, are people who believe in conflict theory in the first place. To anyone else, it doesn't mean anything. And as far as that goes, like, and again with the whole belligerence thing, is it's not even necessarily recognition as much as it just gets you attention. Narcissism is a faculty that I think is best described in a more Jungian archetypal perspective. Actually, I highly agree with Like Stories of Old's description of narcissism. I'll put a video in the description again for Like Stories of Old description of narcissism as more of a faculty of human experience as opposed to like a personality disorder. Obviously it can be a personality disorder, right? But but like narcissism is more useful as a descriptor of a particular kind of inclination and behavior as opposed to, strictly speaking, a personality. Which so it's why we can classify narcissistic personalities as NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. It's like it's a subset of expression of narcissistic tendencies and behavior. Actually, Brad Blandon, I think, is the person he talks about in that video, talking about the little god inside all of us, right? The one that wants recognition, the one that wants to be the center of the story, the one that wants to be the protagonist of the story, the one that wants to be the one lauded, right? And the one that doesn't particularly care for criticism, the one that doesn't particularly care for when things don't go your way, because how could they not go your way, right? You have the special, and here's the thing. This whole thing with the enlightened idea, the critical consciousness, Gnosticism, right? It is a narcissistic religion, again, because unlike with the Thomist or the objectivist, theist and an atheist respectively, right? These people have the humility to recognize that, like, look, reality is the way that it is, whether I like it or not, right? So I have to do my best to understand the world as it is, to find my happiness in the world and interface with it properly, right? Because the world is not going to bend for me. I have to learn how to live in the world. Whereas, again, all these ideas with their all these enlightened ideal systems, right? Again, Marxism, feminism, critical race theory, queer theory, like fascism, Nazism, fucking Kokugaku, for example. All of these enlightened idea like worldviews. They're all intrinsically narcissistic, right? I don't have to learn from the world. I already know what is most important, what is most true. There's nothing the world can teach me. So if the world ever contradicts me, it is the world that is wrong, not me. You see how that frames a form of like self-aggrandizement as humility at times, right? It's like, oh yeah, the monk here, right? Like this monk, he's enlightened. He knows the secret knowledge. He knows the truths behind the truths, right? The most fundamental truths. And all in all, it's like it turns out he's completely disconnected from reality, right? You don't see how that isn't like almost inevitably like a issue of vanaglory, right? And that's not to say that we don't see that again in atheism or Christianity. I already gave an example in atheism per se, right? Marxism comes to mind, but it's like in like religion, we have expressions of this in Christianity, right? Hegel pretended to be a Lutheran, right? Even though he was a Hermeticist, right? But even within Christianity, you have liberation theology, and liberation theology is just a Gnostic subversion of Catholic ideas. That's all it is. Right? When you examine liberation theology in detail, it's just basically Marxism, a Marxist class analysis, but applied to a Catholic system, which is completely contradictory because Catholicism is completely at odds with Marxism. They are not resolvable to each other, but that's actually kind of the point, right? So yeah, it's all of it goes to this. Like the primacy of consciousness is itself an expression of narcissism. The idea that your enlightened idea is first and foremost, and the world is itself wrong. You can't really get more vain than that. Which is again why I keep railing against Gnosticism. It's why I also tell people like the whole distinction between atheism and theism isn't the real issue here. The real issue here is we have a bunch of Gnostic cults running around that people aren't really addressing, and we need to address it at the root. And we can address them all at one time, to be perfectly honest, by addressing the foundational problem. But everyone wants to keep to the surface level conversation where it's like, well, I mean, we can all, I guess we can all die, right? If we won't come together, but I'd rather not, personally.
To feel important and appreciated. This need is a very real and important one. It shows up even in many of the Negro's shopping habits.
Again, really, really quickly, the Negro needs to feel important. They want that recognition. I just want to interject here. This is also one of the reasons that I say that I don't seek recognition, and it's because I only seek the approval of the guy upstairs. Not literally the guy upstairs, but the guy above him, like in the sky. God. That's who I seek approval from. I don't seek approval of everybody else.
Anyone who sells.
This is also why, I mean, to be fair, I appreciate recognition, but I'm not exactly seeking it per se. I would rather people pay attention to what I'm saying than pay attention to me, to be perfectly honest. But that being said, it's why I don't really pay attention to the subscriber counts. Like, it's like a week ago, I realized that like I hit like 900 subs. And it just completely took me off guard because I was like, when the fuck did I hit like 800? What the fuck? Right? It completely caught me off guard. And I'm like, oh, because like, to be perfectly honest, the numbers are not the reason I'm doing it. So I'm doing this because I actually have a purpose with releasing this material, right? I have things I feel as if I need to say because in large part, I don't really see very many people saying the things. And I think people like Kirsha and Leaflet need help. It doesn't have to come from me. But like I'm gonna at least try, right? So like the recognition I appreciate, but I don't exactly need it. Like and but yeah, you do have to remember it's like again, what is it that you're getting recognition for, and is the recognition the thing that you're actually looking for, right? Because again, like the objectivist, like Randian hero, isn't looking for the recognition of other people, right? The architect shouldn't be looking for the approval of his works. Rather, what he should be looking for is to create, the good, is to concretize a metaphysic, a view of man and his life in the world, and to do so well. Right? That's what all artists should do. They shouldn't be necessarily seeking recognition per se. right? And it's the same thing with, like, again, if you're working a job, you work a job, you shouldn't necessarily be seeking recognition for an inflated ego. You should be looking recognition for, if anything, actually having done the job well, right? It's not that hard to understand. There's nothing wrong with receiving recognition, but it's also shouldn't be your primary goal per se.
Or wants to sell to the Negro customer should know about some of these habits. 3 habits in particular play a big part in every sales transaction. To begin with, most Negroes buy by brand. They ask for products by name. They're quick to turn down off brands. Do you wonder why?
Status.
Well, listen to what this customer is thinking.
Status.
That last hat I bought just didn't hold up at all.
You see, for a long time, the Negro has been sold a lot of shoddy, second-class merchandise. So now he asks for name brands in order to make sure he gets his money's worth. Buying by brand, that's the first important Negro buying habit.
And the interesting thing about this is buying name brands does not guarantee that it's going to be good quality. But a lot of people think in this way, and a lot of people are willing to shell out thousands of dollars to buy a product just because it has a certain logo on it, not realizing that the product in general is just a bad product. But hey, if I can afford this expensive name brand, then it must be good. Ooh, I love this. All right, let's.
All right. So we're hitting a bit of a normalcy bias thing here with Gothics, because we have to remember this is also a different time period, right? There is a more reasonable expectation at this given time that, again, name brand actually does equate to, at least in principle, quality, right? Later generations, name brands coast off of their previous reputation, to be perfectly honest, right? But there are times in American history where name brand actually does largely equate to, the quality of the product, right? Because it has that brand recognition for a reason, because it's successful in rendering a service or a good, right? And it did it well. So I think we're jumping the gun a little with this one, but yeah, nowadays that's not necessarily the case, especially with BlackRock fucking propping up, companies with borderline infinite money that can be printed through printing presses in the Fed, because we don't have a bimetallist or even, God help us, a trimetallist system, right? It is my opinion that we need to go back to trimetallism, and that we need to actually genuinely look into actually investing in cryptocurrency, specifically Monero, right? But yeah, so I do think we have a bit of a jump here, right? It's not necessarily just showing off, although showing off is one thing that could motivate name brand, preference in this. But he literally says in the documentary, and she kind of glosses over this, but she had a train of thought, and I've done this before, right? Where I gloss over something someone says, but I already had a train of thought in my head, so then I just missed that detail. He did himself say that the reason for this preference is because, again, certain brands have proven their merit and others have not. And some actually, and you have an issue with knockoffs being that they're knockoffs, so they don't necessarily live up to the standard of the name brand. So that's an actual real reason to prefer a name brand over a knockoff, if the name brand actually does provide what it's selling, and better than the knockoffs. If the knockoffs are better, buy the fucking knockoff. It's not, if they're more or less equivalent and the knockoff is cheaper, yeah, sure, you can buy the knockoff. No, I wouldn't fucking care, right? But if it's a genuine thing where it's the name brand actually works and the name brand is actually just objectively better, then yeah, it makes sense to buy the name brand, because you're buying an objectively better product, right? I do feel as if we may have glossed over this one part.
Continue.
Now for the second. The Negro buys good quality merchandise. Symbols of quality and prestige are very important to the Negro customer. This woman, for example, is buying fine crystalware, but she is also buying the admiration and approval of her friends and relatives. Listen to her thoughts.
Yeah, here we see keeping up with the Joneses, right? There's nothing wrong with buying something beautiful because it's beautiful. But again, the social competition thing is just kind of petty and just pointless.
Isn't it beautiful? I can hardly wait to show it to Sally and Joan.
It's a well-known fact
Yeah.
that many Negro customers are influenced by the opinions of others.
Yo. Oh, many Negroes are influenced by the opinions of others.
I mean, that's a pretty consistent problem across cultures, but this actually kind of reminds me of the episode of King of the Hill where Khan buys a fucking truck in order to this ridiculously large truck in order to style on the fucking neighbors. It doesn't even fit in his garage. So he has to park it in the park. He has to park it in front of the garage because he can't get it in the garage. And Hank's first response is, "Well, what are you gonna do now, smart guy? It doesn't even fit in your garage." Right? So he tries to buy to impress, and then he ends up like making a fool of himself, right? And this also happens more often than people think. But yeah, this is also something you see, especially with, I don't know if it's more often than women. I'm pretty sure men do it too, but in different ways, right? But this is definitely something I saw with like having to work with at one point actually in a couple of different points, primarily female co-workers and clients, right? Was buying useless shit that they didn't actually care about, but rather they just wanted to get the approval of someone else. And like, again, to me, it made no sense because like I don't understand why you give a shit about this. Nowadays, I do, even though I think it's still dumb. But yeah, so again, there's nothing wrong with buying something good or even gaudy for yourself, genuinely for yourself, right? But if you're doing it to impress someone else, that's another thing. There is also another reason to buy something, good and beautiful like this, to make someone else happy. It's fine to, again, and it should be a thing that you should just regularly do if you can, to buy, especially like, to buy gifts for the people you care about, right? Not necessarily like every day, obviously, right? But get your wife something, right? Get your wife something beautiful, not necessarily expensive, but something that's pretty, something that she would like, something she would value. If you're a woman, get your husband something he would like. And it's not that bad. There's nothing wrong with buying things to make someone else happy as well, especially if it's a thing that they want. Yeah. So again, I think I've covered this topic already earlier in the video. I just didn't put in you can also buy for other people to make them happy. But again, if you're gonna do that, make sure it's actually for them, right?
Yo, do I even need to elaborate on this? Seriously, just consider our current culture and how everyone is so obsessed about how other people perceive them. Why? And this is especially true with people that wear their identity on their sleeves. Black people, women, anyone a part of the LGBTQIA plus minus community. What you said.
Well, okay, so I wasn't the only one who thought of women in particular, right? I mean, yeah, sure. We're talking about, yeah, and this is something that I have observed of the black community as well, especially nowadays. And yeah, I didn't even think about the LGBT thing, but yeah, fair enough. That's another community that seems to do this quite often.
Was harmful. You're perpetuating a stereotype. That's a microaggression. You called me by the wrong pronoun. You misgendered me. Cultural appropriation. Imagine how much time one of these people that I'm talking about, imagine how much time is wasted complaining about how other people perceive them. Now imagine what they can do with that time. Imagine what this woman in this video could do with her money. Invest it, save it for something that she actually wants for herself instead of worrying about what her friends will say. Same template, different generation.
What their friends may...
Yeah, all I gotta say is the pursuit of money for the sake of money is also kind of cringe and gay, to be perfectly honest. I'm about as capitalistic as anyone can get. but the pursuit of money for the sake of money is kind of cringe and gay. Presumably, right, if you're seeking money, then you're seeking some kind of advantage for some reason, right? There's something you want. But there does come a point where you genuinely have to ask yourself, is this actually, like, is this enough, right? There does come a point where it's like just making more money actually possibly becomes a detriment. And this especially becomes an issue with like companies who are looking to potentially, like, again, get participate in shareholder capitalism. Are you fucking sure about that? The stakeholder capitalism is barely capitalism at all. It's not a game that you necessarily want to play. So as a business owner, it may actually be better to remain where you are than just seek perpetual line up. Because here's the thing, the line does not go up forever, right? Eventually the line has to plateau. So again, there does come some degree of, like, again, what would you call, prudence about your decisions, some degree of wisdom and reason you have to apply to your decisions as a businessman. And you don't have to work for perpetual growth, because perpetual growth is just objectively impossible, to be perfectly honest. So, like, sometimes even just not everything has to be productive, right? Sometimes also just being able to sit and be still for a time is also, good. And I've noticed that there's a lot of women who can't seem to do that for some reason, right? Well, I mean, I know why, but I'd rather watch an Alexander Grace video in order to explain that, because I'm gonna get called all kinds of names for that anyway, so I might as well make it funny and commit to that particular bit. But where was I going with this? Oh wait, yeah. She brought up, like, the pronouns and stuff like that. It's interesting that she mentions this, right? Because the whole premise behind the Marxist idea is that there is this triune system that generates the world around us, right? So there is a ideological system. So let me explain this. There is a, like, system that is in place. So a system of oppression. There is an ideological system to justify the system of oppression, and then there is some kind of self-replicating asset. Now, under the Marxist theory, this is actually really easy to define, and these are all code-generating. So it's like the system of oppression creates the ideology and the self-replicating asset. The self-replicating asset generates the system of oppression and the justification system, and the justification system generates the system of oppression and the self-replicating asset, right? So it's just it's just an ideological circle jerk. But anyway, so under Marxism, the system of oppression is the system of the bourgeois, right? Capitalist production. Whereas the system, the justifying ideology is capitalism itself. I mean, the Marxists invented the word capitalism, which is why we probably shouldn't be using that word in the first place, because it has its own historical connotations. We should probably prefer something like laissez-faire, right? And the self-replicating asset in this case is capital. Capital is a self-replicating asset that propagates these ideas. Every single one of these fucking post-Marxian ideas has the exact same idea, except transcribed to a different field, right? So, for example, you have in CRT, what is the system of oppression? The system of oppression is what would you say? The system of oppression would be white supremacy, and it would be like white standards, right? The system of, like, the ideology would be white supremacy, right? And then the the self-replicating asset is whiteness itself, right? Now, if you actually read CRT material, you'll find that whiteness is described in very many ways as basically identical to capital, as, again, it's very possible for someone who is not white to benefit from white supremacy and gain access to that capital, right? You act white kind of stuff, right? And the same thing goes with, like, queer theory. In queer theory, the system of oppression is heteronormativity, right? then the justifying idea is heteronormativism, right? And then you have it's the normative part that's important in queer theory, by the way. It's not the hetero. The hetero is a distraction. It's the normalcy part you need to pay attention to. And the self-replicating asset is normalcy itself, right? So under all of these, you have this idea that there is some articulable property that is self-replicating and can be used to ascribe some degree of wealth and power imbalance in some field, right? This applies to feminism, this applies to CRT, this applies to queer theory, this applies to Marxism, this applies to all of them. So I do like that she brought that up because, yeah, you're talking about like flaunting what you have, right? What are you doing when you're flaunting the identities in intersectionality? Well, you're flaunting that you have this counter capital, right? This counter to this property that gives you social status, right? That you can use to show how good and special you really are, how in touch with the movement you are, right? How enlightened you actually are based on your identity. And it's just doing exactly this, but with gay Gnostic bullshittery, to be perfectly honest. But it's no different than this, except this has more dignity than the stuff that we're talking about with the Wookiees.
You think of a certain item often decides whether or not the sale is made. So remember, the Negro buys quality merchandise. That's the second important point.
Well, I mean, we should buy quality merchandise if we're going to buy something, right? We should have some degree of respect for ourselves. I mean, if you have an issue with like monetary, if you have financial issues, right? Then yeah, sure, buying something that's substandard for a time can help. But even then, if you buy quality and it actually lasts longer, then it saves you money down the line. So we're talking actual quality. We're not saying perceived quality. We're talking actual quality here, right? But therein lies the catch. Oftentimes, these people will sometimes, like the salesmen, will sometimes conflate actual quality with a perceived quality. And that's how they get you with some of this stuff. So you need to be careful.
And here's the third thing to remember when selling to a Negro customer. When he specifically asks for one thing, don't try to sell him something else. Don't try to switch him at the point of sale. If you do, he'll probably react something like this.
Doesn't he think I've got the money to pay for it?
There's a reason for this reaction. Again, because he's had experience with cheap merchandise, the Negro resents being offered a substitute. He wants to be sold on quality, not price.
All right, so quality, name brand products, social status, and also don't sell them something else at the point of sale. So in this scenario, this black guy is thinking, well, why are they trying to sell me this other product? Do they think I can't afford it? Now, what's more common is you'll go into a store, you'll buy a product, and when you're checking out, they'll say, hey, would you like to add this extra thing to your order? And a lot of people fall for it because to them, they think that they're getting a deal. So now it's sort of reversed where it's not so much that the Negro is trying to prove to the store owner that they can afford it. Now, I think a lot of people assume that, oh, this is a better deal, I have to take it. So I think that that's very interesting. So let's continue and see what else he has to say.
I will say, I don't know if she misunderstood this or if I'm misunderstanding what she is saying. So correct me in the comments if I am wrong, right? But it does kind of seem like she may have misunderstood what the narrator was saying and what the actor, playing the black customer in that scene was themselves saying. It's like, because it's like trying to sell him something else or add on to it, right? Because that would be also selling something else. And let me double check this.
So I think a lot of this.
The Negro resents being offered a substitute. He wants to be sold on quality, not price.
All right, so quality, name brand products, social status, and all.
I don't understand what the problem here is. Hold on.
Doesn't he think I've got the money to pay for it?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, this is just actively an insult. Like, if I go in and I have the money to pay for X and then I'm offered Y instead, that's cheaper. It's like, okay, I mean, sure, this may be a better deal, but this is not the thing that I wanted to buy. I want to buy this thing right here I came in here for. So it's like, yeah, I mean, obviously there's the issue of, like, it's just objectively an insult to the guy, right? You think I can't afford this, right? But even, again, more, just in reality, it's just an insult to the guy in general. It's like, oh, yeah, this is for you, not this. It's like, okay, why are you making this switch up at the end of the... Like, we had this entire conversation, presumably, about this thing that I had agreed to get, and then now you're trying to change the agreement to give me a product that is cheaper. I mean, fine, yeah, sure, I do appreciate when things are cheaper, yeah, fair enough, but I wanted to buy this thing because I saw a quality in it. So why are you changing it up on me? Again, I think we're also missing the fact that, like, this is just a blatantly disrespectful thing to do to a person, right? We already came to an agreement, then you're trying to change the agreement at the very last second. Like, what is wrong with you, right? Like, I'll give you an example, right? If I go to the comic book store, right? And what do I have on the shelf right now? If I buy a copy of Fourth World, right? And it's like, I want to buy a beautiful copy of Fourth World, one with the ornate, one of the variant covers, because I like that variant cover more than I do the normal one, right? And it's more pricey, right? I'm like, okay, well, I have the money and I can go on there. I walk in there and I go to the store and I get there and we have this agreement, and then instead of giving me the variant cover I want, he gives me the standard cover, and he's like, oh, I can offer you this for cheaper. I'm like, I didn't fucking want the cheaper one. I wanted the thing I came in here to get. Why are you doing this to me? We already established you have the thing I want. Why are you trying to deny me the thing I'm literally going to pay you? Again, either my time, my availability, my productivity, or, my someone's belief in me. Like, why are you disrespecting, like, again, my work, which I'm offering in exchange to you through money, at the end of the conversation? Again, this one seems like a basic respect thing. I know that the comic book example may have been the bit of an out there thing, but it's like I'm just relaying it back to another thing to prove the point, right? It's like, if I want a specific variant cover of the Fourth World Omnibus collection, I don't know if there is a variant cover for it, to be perfectly honest. I'm just using that as a hypothetical example. And again, we have this agreement. We go all the way up to the cash register, and then you switch it out at the end, and then you try to dock the price. That way, again, the switch out is less insulting. I actually might be a little bit more insulted, because it's like, my guy, we have established that this is the thing I'm trying to get. Why are you doing this? And yeah, sure, that may come into my mind too. It's like, do you think I can't pay for this? But that's just one of the many parts of the insult, because there's multiple layers that would be an insult to a person. So it's like, I think we're glossing over that part.
These are the keys to selling the Negro customer. Another point. The Negro family does things together, as a group. The family works as a unit.
Kind of base, not gonna lie.
It lives as a unit. And it buys as a unit.
What happened? Oh, man.
When you sell to one member, you many times sell to all. It's also true that many places of entertainment are still closed to the Negro. So he spends more of his money for the things that are available to him, often for items that are considered luxuries. Mm-hmm. Another trait of the Negro market is the fact that it is a pre-sold market. We know that the Negro buys by brand, and he buys the brands that he knows something about.
Yep.
Where does the Negro buyer get this information?
Magazines.
We know that Negro customers are turning more and more to the publications that are tailored specifically to their needs.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Huh? Huh? What? Individuality is so important. Any media outlet that caters to a superficial characteristic, skin color, gender, sexuality, is not to be trusted because they are enabling the hive mind. They're enabling this warped belief that people who share the same characteristic are pretty much drones of each other. They're just carbon copies of one another. That is racist in itself because black entertainment television, what is that? I am black. Entertain me. How? What am I going to consume as a Negro to be entertained? Let me tell you, I grew up listening to alternative rock, 80s hair metal. I don't understand how a network can say this type of music is for black people. What? Same thing with like Ebony magazine. I don't care if someone shares the same skin tone as me because skin color doesn't tell me if the other person has good morals, if that other person is an intellectual, if that other person shares the same hobbies as I do. It's so interesting. We're essentially creating more stereotypes as we keep progressing into the future. And it's because so many people are not only obsessed with getting recognition from outside sources, wanting so much acceptance, but they also become obsessed with themselves. It's very narcissistic. I'm black, I'm a woman, I'm a part of the LGBTQIA plus minus. Like, it's become this obsession. And then when you have media outlets like this that cater to a specific characteristic, you're enabling that stereotype. For example, if I see a black guy walking down the street and he has his pants sagging and he's got gold grills in his mouth and he's wearing a do-rag, I can assume something about that person. It's not nice for me to assume, but where did I get that stereotype from? Well, if I think of black entertainment, what do I see as the dominant form of entertainment? Rap and hip hop. Let's look at rap and hip hop. What do you see? This is the problem. When you create something like this, you're encouraging that narrative, and you have no right to complain that people are stereotyping you. Let's continue.
Okay, so I do have to kind of chime in here because I think we might have also missed something. Let me go back here and see if I did misunderstand this. Okay, it's going to be around the time when the magazine pops in.
Negro buyer get this information?
Magazines.
We know that Negro customers are turning more and more to the publications that are tailored specifically to their needs.
Did you hear that?
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, fair enough. But objectively speaking, even now, there are actually certain needs that are just more tailored to the Negro than it is to the white or the Asian. And I'll give you an example that's actually not that hard to understand. Dermatology, right? Anyone who has ever had to work with hair, trichology, which is a subset of dermatology, knows that the shape of your hair actually is very much determined by the shape of the hair shaft, right? And the shape of the hair shaft is, has a number of different implications to how it needs to be taken care of. So, for example, straight hair is a very cylindrical shaft. It's like the straight, coarse hair that you find in Asians. It's a very strong, cylindrical shaft. But the curlier hair gets, the thinner it gets. It's no longer like a cylindrical shape. It becomes more of like a, how would you say it? It gets flatter and flatter, right? That's what actually causes the curl shape. And obviously, when you get curlier and curlier and kinkier, that's the flatter the hair, right? So, and straight hair and curly hair actually have different, needs. So there are, like, especially for cosmetics, there are differences in needs for different communities based off of evolutionary traits that their ancestors developed to survive specific environments. And there are as survival advantages, for example, to having straight hair. One example that comes off the top of my head is like you'll find in like colder climates, hair that is straight, it provides a natural, like, dense covering for the scalp. And if you shave your head, you'll notice very quickly that much of the heat that leaves your body would come from your scalp, right? So it actually helps you to retain heat to have coarse, straight hair, as is common in Asian populations. But if you live in, for example, a dry and arid environment, honestly, curly hair is more effective in that particular environment because the curls of the hair actually pulls the mass of hair gradually, the more curly it gets, away from the scalp, which allows for air to pass through the hair and pull heat off the sweat in the scalp. So there's actually evolutionary advantages to stuff like this. And so, yeah, there are actually things that would be more tailored, just naturally speaking, to one group, but not another group, that would be, again, would imply that if you're selling cosmetics, for example, that you should probably have targeted focus. Like, for example, if you're doing makeup, if you're looking for like natural skin tone makeup, you're going to tailor different products to, for example, the Asian than you are going to, for example, a woman of Anglo heritage, and you're gonna sell different cosmetics of natural skin tone to an African American than you would, at least in theory, to, like, for example, let's say they had the appropriate economics, a Dinka, right? Because a Dinka is going to be way darker than a African American. So yeah, it's like there is some degree of where you will always have some degree of like products just tailored to specific groups based off of whether or not they're male or female. I mean, let's not beat around the bush there, right? And the same thing, there's going to be certain products that are always going to be tailored to one group but not another. Again, we're just talking about like basic cosmetic stuff right here, basic hair care kind of stuff. It's going to be different between groups because of different physiological evolutionary traits. And so yeah, there is that, but there is also a thing where it's like, again, different cultures have different values, so this would also tailor concerns as well. Actually, speaking of regarding the melting pot issue, because this was brought up actually when I was talking to Captain Terror and Doctor of Insanity at one point. We were bringing up like America as a melting pot analogy. And he brought up the point that he doesn't like the melting pot analogy because it's like when, like if you put a bunch of cheese in a melting pot, right, it all becomes one amorphous mass. It's like literally the globo homo, project is the melting pot, right? Everything bleeds together into one, like into one thing. There's no longer any ability to distinguish between the things that went in. It's all one featureless mass. It was like, well, yeah, I mean, a better analogy for this would be more of a curry, right? Because in a curry, you're mixing things that on the face of it shouldn't go together, but when they come together, they create a cohesive whole that is at times better than the sum of its individual parts, right? So a better analogy for the United States when it comes to like the different nations, whether they be American Indians or the white American, the black American, immigrants from like Japan, right? Leaflet, for example, right? The goal is not to create like national homo, right? Right? You're never going to get the New Yorker to be the same as the Texan, and you're never going to get the Californian to be the same as an Alaskan, right? It's never going to fucking happen. A Hawaiian is never going to be the same as a Floridian. Like, what the fuck are we doing here, right? So the goal shouldn't be like the global homo just on a national scale. It should be the curry analogy, right? We should be trying to get disparate pieces that may not on the surface seem as if they come together, but when you actually combine them, those components create a cohesive whole. It's not all components create a cohesive whole. Not everything goes together. Right? You can't, for example, have Islam be a big factor in the United States because Islam doesn't mesh together with anything. It wouldn't work in this curry analogy. It would be a kind of thing that just wouldn't mesh together with the other components. So, yeah. Random tangent aside, right?
And the information that they want to read about. Many leading businessmen and companies already know this. That's why so many of them are taking this direct, sure route of reaching the Negro customer. The vice president of advertising of the Gruen Watch Company, for example, says this.
In many important cities throughout the United States, Negroes are important customers of the credit jeweler. Therefore, it seemed that Ebony magazine would be a very important advertising medium for us. We would say it was very well received, and from our viewpoint, a very successful campaign.
From the Remington Rand Company comes this statement.
Our records show that advertising in Ebony has been effective in many ways. As all good advertising should, it has built a terrific amount of goodwill and has brought a volume of sales and sales inquiries.
Yeah, unlike modern advertising, which is meant to push a fucking message, where, therefore destroying goodwill, and, doesn't actually oftentimes get you a lot of money. How times have changed, right?
A representative of the Alaga Syrup Company makes this statement.
Because of Alaga's regard for the influence of ebony in the Negro market, advertising space was doubled. Alaga's long experience in selling to Negroes now takes the most direct route to its best customers, reaching ebony's 2.5 million audience in every issue.
And here are the statements of still other business leaders.
Wow.
I just realized that in that whole rant about hair evolution, I forgot to mention that my point of bringing that up was about again, the health needs of different hair textures are dependent on the texture of the hair, right? Certain hair types are more resilient, for example, to water damage than others. That's one example, right? So those differences in how you have to care for the hair actually are kind of interesting, but I'm not a trichologist, and I'd have to get a friend of mine to explain some of these details to me again, because it's been a while since I talked about them.
Yes, many business leaders are discovering the most direct and most efficient way of reaching the new Negro market. Look here at the results of the same advertisement in 2 different publications.
Wow.
Ebony and another general magazine.
General. Again, we'll use an example.
I am noticing a cross-group pattern. I am noticing a... oh, wait, hold on. Okay, never mind. Sorry. For a moment, I was like, okay, that was just me misreading the thing. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that right there would generally hold across most groups. Definitely the men would not read as much as the women under any category, almost, except for maybe the gays. But
Ebony Magazine is a magazine made specifically for Black people. What was Black Lives Matter? It was an organization or a movement that was made specifically for Black people. What happened with Black Lives Matter? It turned out that they didn't really think Black Lives mattered. What mattered was their own bank accounts. That's what mattered. They knew if I just put Black in the title and I put 3 Black women as the face of this organization, we know that the Negro is going to bite. They're going to bite it. They're going to latch onto it. Same thing with this. If we just put a Black face on this magazine and talk about Black stuff, we know that they're going to buy it because there's this sense of trust. And this is something that I think people need to not be so comfortable with. It's very utopian to assume that just because you share the same characteristics with someone that you can trust them. The only person I trust is God. I will give other people the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not going to fully trust someone, especially just because we share the same skin tone. It's like this one time I was working for a company and this random Black guy came in, never met him a day in my life, but he goes, hey, can you hook me up, sister? No, what do you mean hook you up? I don't even know you. I've never spoken to you. I don't know who you are. Why would I hook you up? I can hook you up with an application. I think that we should be kind to one another and we should always try to help those who genuinely need the help, but we also need to have some level of prudence to know when someone is trying to take advantage of us, or to understand what the most logical and reasonable course of action would be. If I were to just give someone a job just because they're Black, that would mean that I'm blindly endorsing someone without knowing anything about them. And you see this all the time with politics.
You can see that proportionately, more men and women read the ad in Ebony than the one in the other magazine. And they did a better job of remembering it, too. A greater percentage of readers noted, associated, and remembered the ad in Ebony. But now, wait a minute. If the Negro market is so big and easy to reach, Why aren't more companies going out after it? Well, often because of the feeling that there's something entirely different, unusual about selling to the Negro. But is it really so different? What do salesmen say?
I will say that experience has taught me that that not all groups do business the same way, right? Just letting you know that, like, if you're doing business, right, then you're doing business with someone from the Middle East, even in the United States, right? Someone oftentimes Middle Easterners will want to haggle with you, right? They'll expect haggling with you, even though that's not really what we do here. And so one thing that a lot of businessmen do eventually learn how to do is to haggle, is to play the game of the customer, right? They know that this customer is almost certainly going to expect to be haggled. So then they actually bump up the price. That way, when it's time to discuss the costs, they can just play the game, entertain the customer, and then get the customer down to the price that was actually the price in the first place, because they know that it's going to happen. Like, I've talked to a couple different people who have had to do business with Middle Easterners in the United States, and yeah, this is a thing that not everyone does business the same way. So this does kind of, like, I don't know if these companies have had like times with this. But yeah, depending on like how your culture is, it will affect how you do business. So there is a point in time where it's like you do have to do business with someone differently to treat them the same. Just funny enough, right? They're like, okay, they're gonna try to haggle me. So then, yeah, sure, I can just entertain them and, like, entertain them for a bit. And then they'll still pay me the exact same anyone else would have paid me, but they'll feel as if they got a good deal out of it, right? Make of that what you will, but it is a thing that business owners have told me before that they've had to do.
The successful salesmen who do a good job of selling in Negro.
So the reason I brought that up is, like, it's not that unreasonable that this might be a concern, especially if, again, you don't know anything about the culture. This could be a thing that actually, like, again, do I know how to do business with this particular culture? But again, it's kind of funny that the point of this video is, it turns out that doing business with the Negro is actually not that different from doing business with the white man, right?
Communities. How do you go about getting the order?
How do I get the order? Well, to tell you the truth, I don't do anything. Anything different, that is. I've been calling on these accounts long enough to know that the Negro just wants to be treated like everybody else. No matter who you're calling on, a little friendliness and courtesy help a lot. But naturally, anybody resents being patronized or talked down to.
Yeah?
So I usually call a man Mr. Brown, Mr. Smith, or Mr. whatever his name is, until he tells me to call him by his first name. And of course, I always stick to business. I stay away from talk about race or religion or politics. That goes for talk about Negro celebrities, too. You know, this business about what good prize fighters and singers the Negroes are. Who cares? When a guy's in business, no matter what color his skin is, he's interested in making a living, in making money. That's uppermost in his mind.
Hey, woke companies? Yeah, the virtue signaling companies that can't stop talking about representation, equity, diversity. That is how you kill your business. Unless, of course, your market, your core consumer base are people that are also fixated on those topics. If you want to make money, you have to play the game. This is a no-brainer. Politics, religion, these are topics that can get very divisive at times, and luckily for me, I talk about both on this channel. Winky face. However, in terms of business, the safest thing a company can do is to not take a specific social, political, or religious stance. When the Roe v. Wade got overturned, a lot of companies were taking a stance on that. You're taking away a woman's right to choose, without even considering how many of their own employees are pro-life. Same thing with Black Lives Matter. Without considering how many of their own employees are not okay with that organization. If a company has good products or a good service that I want, I'm going to do business with them. That's capitalism for you. But the second they take a stance, that opens up the opportunity for people to say, you know what, I don't agree with that. That goes against my morals, and maybe I don't want to support this company anymore. I don't want to fund what they believe in because it goes against what I believe in. This doesn't mean that you can't take a stance on a particular issue that you're passionate about, but you need to understand the risks. So for me as a content creator, I know that if I talk about a certain topic, my subscriber count is going to go like this, always fluctuating. And I don't have employees. I'm not selling a product. I'm making videos, and if someone tosses me $5 every now and then, hey, thank you. But it's very different from a business and dealing with employees that you depend on to keep that business running, as well as consumers that you depend on to keep your business afloat.
I guess maybe what I'm saying is that
Well, I mean, abortion was just brought up, so I guess I could talk about this part just a little bit, right? Yeah, one of the explicit goals of founding Planned Parenthood by Margaret Sanger was actually the control of the population of, and I quote, undesirables. And, well, the disabled were obviously part of that undesirable category to these people, right? Just refer to the Soup Emporium Helen Keller video if you want some rundown on that. There is a little bit of cringe disability studies nonsense in the video, which is again another Marxist subversion. But that being said, in general, yeah, he actually points out the real reasons to not particularly care about Helen Keller is that she actually believed in eugenics, even against the disabled. Fucking ironically enough, right? So the other thing is Margaret Sanger, one of the groups was the Negro. That was another group that they wanted to effectively get to auto-genocide, right? To genocide themselves through abortion so that they could, you know, not impede on the society that they were trying to build. Because again, Margaret Sanger decided that the Negro was undesirable, so they marketed abortion to the black community, and that has had severe consequences ever since, right? Just, it is hard to explain how much, like, how many people have died, like, how many babies have been killed through abortion in total, versus also how many specifically in the black community were just deleted from the census. Right, just completely, you know, just murdered in the womb. Just, it is straight up like Moloch style, a Moloch worship style practice, right? It's like many pagan practices in the ancient days, right? You give to some abstract object, right? Some Platonic concept, sometimes even. Like sacrifice to be rewarded, right? And because not all the gods of paganism were, you know, ghosts like Zeus, right? A lot of the gods of paganism, like Libertas, were Platonic ideals, right? And yeah, nowadays we see that in the name of equality, in the name of liberty, right? We see the you know, literal human beings sacrificed to this Platonic ideal of opportunity, right? Interesting. So, yeah, bit of a demonic practice, right? And then, again, we had the whole issue that Lyndon B. Johnson and a number of other Democrats talked about keeping the black community on a new plantation upon which they'll never be able to leave, right? And, yeah, that was the goal of destroying the black community. The goal of destroying the black family was to destroy the black culture and destroy the black culture to make it dependent on the, you know, the basically dependent and dependent voter system for the Democrats. So, yeah, once again, it turns out the left is, it preaches one thing and it actually does the other thing. Not to mention, funny enough, you know, a little bit me being petty, but not to mention that the which party was the one that actually founded the KKK. Yeah, just gonna put that out there. Which party is Andrew Jackson associated with? Right? Is he more associated with the Republicans or the Democrats? Interesting. Didn't he do the, you know, out of all the times that people talk about like the fucking alleged genocide of the Native Americans, right? I'm going to say alleged because I don't want to have the conversation here about whether or not about any of that specific. I'm just going to say, again, all the complaints that the left makes about the genocide of about the American Indian. Who started the Trail of Tears? It's really activates the almonds, doesn't it?
I try to help any way I...
Funny enough, which president actually went to war to free the slave? Ah, yes, Abraham Lincoln. What party was he part of, right? Really activates the almonds. Not that modern Republicans are anything like their, you know, foundational, you know, not like their foundational counterparts. No, they are definitely not. But just saying.
I can. Sometimes with displays or ad materials, or an idea once in a while. The important thing is that if it helps push sales for the dealer, it helps push them for me, too.
Handle the Negro account just like any of your others. Don't patronize. Stick to business. Get interested in the account. Pitch in and help any way you can. Sounds like...
The other thing that I forgot to mention, as he just said, the secret to selling to the Negro is to treat the Negro like everybody else. So, all you black-owned businesses, all you woman-owned businesses, do you not want to be treated like everybody else? You're actually selling yourself short when you have something like that, because that doesn't tell me anything about your products and your services that you provide. It tells me nothing. And I always tell this story about one time I went to a black-owned business against my better judgment. I went into this business that was advertised in this way, and I saw these beautiful brass earrings. $40. Wore them for 3 days and then they broke. Well, that's a black-owned business for you. If you want to be treated like everyone else, you should act like it.
Like pretty good.
I had too many windows open. So yeah, this actually brings up a point that I thought about a moment ago, and I got lost in me being petty about the fucking Democrats and they're claiming to be the party of righteousness, and then historically speaking, they're almost every fucking time on the wrong side. But yeah, about the whole thing about like this is how you kill your companies. I didn't do this part on purpose, but I uploaded a video of Kirsha fucking crashing out about this, and rightly so, because Kirsha is effectively a modern day Cassandra at this point. So let's just let Kirsha talk about this whole thing about woke going broke, because it may be true of small companies, it's not true of the large ones.
They're promising profits. It matters when the profits don't manifest. Their zeal can only carry them so far. People keep saying that, and yet I'm still talking about bridge. I think we need to get out of the attitude of, surely people will suddenly realize this is all retarded and subversive, and surely it won't go farther than this. I think we really need to pull our heads out of our asses with that line of thinking. Their zeal can only carry them so far. Surely they would have been stopped in the 1970s. Surely in the 1990s, where everything felt fine, they wouldn't keep going. Surely in the 2000s, we didn't need affirmative action anymore. Surely after they have maintained control over all forms of media entertainment, they'll stop here. Surely it will just go away. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. How long has Keir been talking about bridge? Like 2 or 3 years? How many more years am I gonna have to wait for anyone of relevance to actually focus on this shit and notice what's going on? I feel like I'm going crazy. I hate being Alex Jones, man. Not suddenly, gradually, they're already losing ground for trying to move too fast. How do you watch me and you have that opinion? That's a great question. You believe they'll never stop? It's a destructive cult hell-bent on ending the human race? People realize that corps and politicians are evil, dumb robots? It's like, that's why I've been saying, like, when they talk about the level of engagement and the level of I won't buy from this brand that they're witnessing here, whether those statistics are correct or not, I think more people need to live by that, especially if we want to make change, you know? And it's frustrating how many other people, like, ignore this kind of shit that's going on and want to keep talking about, woke is on the way out, DEI is dying, and it's like, no, it's not. Like, we've made some small wins, and it's great. Celebrate the wins. Don't get demoralized, because that's what they want. but it's like we're not overall winning, and culturally we're very far from doing that. Perceive the layers. Marxism is like onions. So I can't believe they've written so many paragraphs just to say black people like things. DEI is still very much alive in Canada. Yeah. It's, you know, they dismiss it when you tell them the people behind it have unlimited money to burn. It's very frustrating. Though BlackRock did get a fucking kneecapping recently.
All right, I hope y'all enjoyed the extra random anime clip that I put into that particular video, because damn, is it frustrating, because Kersha is absolutely fucking right. Because you got to remember, these companies like BlackRock, they're propped up by governments. They're not normal companies. Oh my god, they do effectively have infinite money to burn. No, they're not gonna. Yeah, it doesn't really matter if they lose your business per se. They're still gonna be able to do what they want to do because they effectively have unlimited money, especially with respect to any competition that's gonna pop up, right? But oh my god, this is where like developing parallel economies are kind of important. Also, by the way, that anime clip came from The Big O. Go watch it if you haven't seen it. Great show. Very anti-Gnostic, funny enough.
Sales advice. That's the secret of selling the Negro. Well, how about it? What do you think of this new market? It can open new outlets for you and for everybody who sells goods or services. It's still possible to get in on the ground floor when this market is just beginning to grow and to expand. The facts and the figures that we see here are just a small sample of what they promise to be next year and the years after that. Yes, here are men and women with money to spend, and they spend it for exactly the same things as you and I and everyone else. They buy almost every type of product and service that you have to offer, and they can be reached like everyone else through publications that appeal to their interests and desires, that deliver the kind of loyal readership that can be proved both in surveys and in down-to-earth sales. Here is a ready-made market waiting to be asked to buy. Here are millions of customers for what you have to sell. Customers with $15 billion to spend.
You do not hate communism enough. The fucking leftist, like, oh my god, the leftist dialectic went out of its way to destroy beautiful families like this. Not just in this one group, across the fucking board. The complete dissolution of the family was by design to destabilize society. And again, remember what they took from you. That's all I gotta say. Remember what these fuckers took from you. Oh my god. I already got through I already got through the Native American the American Indian identity was being destroyed by the Marxists. Remember how the Marxists destroyed the black identity, identity. What did they do? What did they do? What did they replace it with? To tell you all you need to fucking know.
Wow. Okay. That was excellent. And I hope that this reaction video helps provide a little bit more clarity into why I emphasize the importance of individuality. As I said, this was made in 1954. and they didn't have all of the technology and forms of communication that we have today, yet they were still able to predict the spending habits of Black Americans. Imagine what can be done today. People have.
Yeah, and it's not just the spending habits thing. That's actually funny enough. There are actually like, if you go on funny enough, Reddit, there are actually some really funny stories about parents who got really mad that, like, Amazon was advertising pregnancy supplies to their daughter, and then it turns out, oh wait, Amazon knew that the daughter was pregnant before them. I was like, oh shit, that's fucking interesting. But so yeah, there's a lot you can do with all the data points that these companies are getting and buying and selling, and that you're just freely giving, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, it's an advertiser's dream to have all this stuff. Funny enough, though, it's not always manipulative. A Billion Wicked Thoughts is actually a aggregate of psychology information. Is a psychological study done unethically from a psychology perspective, because it wasn't a bunch of psychologists who did it. It was a bunch of engineers who did the study on human sexuality based off of search engine queries, and it actually reveals quite a bit about the subconscious of desires of men and women. Is actually kind of interesting. So there's a lot of information that you're giving out, and this is why I don't participate in shit like oh yeah, here's the 10-year challenge, right? Here, you upload your photo from like 10 years ago. See how you've changed. It's like absolutely fucking not happening. Why would I do this? This is very clearly going to be used to train like facial recognition AI that is going to then be put into cameras across street corners. Absolutely fucking no, right? Absolutely not. But yeah, no. People are way too people are way too lenient and forthcoming about shit they really shouldn't be talking about online, and because like all of it is being harvested by not just companies but also by governments. Remember, the NSA was involved in data scraping basically all phone communications and as much of the internet as it could. So it's not just companies you need to be worried about. The feds also do this shit too.
Have to stop thinking as a collective and start thinking as an individual. And this also means stop obsessing about characteristics that don't mean anything. You being Black, you being a woman, you being gay means absolutely nothing to me. Life is hard. Everyone deals with some type of hardship and adversity throughout their life. What matters is, what are you going to do to overcome that? Are you going to complain, or are you going to overcome? That's the...
Yeah, basically, are you going to resign to fate, or are you going to be a conqueror and live the heroic life, overcome life itself, right? That's the real question here, are you going to are you going to be crushed underfoot, or are you going to live a heroic life? Now, that doesn't mean you have to be some badass, right? It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to go out and get into all these fights that you don't necessarily need to be involved into. No, living the heroic life can be as simple as being a good and attentive dad, to be perfectly honest, right? Being a good and attentive mother. Those are equally the participation in the heroic life. And they are very important participations in the heroic life, because every good generation of good parents is the guardian at the gate, the first guardian at the gate, against barbarians at the gates. Because guess what? Every new generation is the barbarian at the gates. They have to be civilized, right? And they're also the guardians against the void of extinction. Right? So it's like living the life of a attentive and good dad, or an attentive and good mother, is living a heroic life. It may not necessarily be the most glamorous style of heroism, but it is still a life of heroic living, right? You have your own dragons to slay. Also, by the way, when it comes to all this stuff, there's another piece of advice I think people need to pay mind of. Don't go around slaying other people's dragons. We are all meant to be dragon slayers, but in order to be a dragon slayer, we actually have to have our own dragons, right? So don't go around fixing everyone's problems just because you can't. You have to let people actually overcome their own dragons to accrue their own confidence and honor. But anyway.
Real question here. I hate this idea of getting into the oppression and victimization Olympics because that's where we are right now. So this is what I recommend.
Yeah, that's intersectionality. That's the interlocking systems of oppression math, where you get to actually. It's not really math, because like if you actually took the logic of intersectionality to its logical conclusion, intersectionality would deconstruct itself. To be perfectly honest, because you would find that no one really fits in the same intersectional node. So, ironically enough, the intersectionalist logic should lead directly to individualism. Because the individual is, funny enough, the most oppressed minority, right? Right? Oh my God. But yeah, they never take it to its logical conclusion because they know that the logical conclusion will deconstruct it. So they always artificially put a stopgap to prevent it from deconstructing all the way to individualism. Which should tell you how disingenuous the intersectionalist logic actually is. This is actually something I pointed out when I was taking a course on intersectionality, and my professor actually accepted it as a valid criticism of intersectionality, even though they disagreed with it. But they were like, yeah, I may have gotten the one honest intersectionality teacher in the country because. At the end of that course, I got a 95, right? I think I missed. I think I erred on like one minor thing and one assignment. But I got a 95, right? I damn near almost perfected the class. Perfected the class because it wasn't that hard. Intersectionality isn't actually that hard, but it is dumb.
And this goes for everyone, not just black people. It's that in order to fight back against this sort of social engineering that's been taking place for generations, we need to first recognize that our identity doesn't matter. In comparison to what's on our heart, what's in our mind, our identity is useless. Because the ironic thing about it is the more you obsess about yourself, my blackness, my gender, I'm a black woman, the more you do that, the quicker you're inevitably going to be shoved into a box with other people who also obsess about that thing. And it's
I'm going to have to add a slight correction here because none of those things are you, right? That's the thing that like a lot of the ancient sages would point out is like all these qualities about yourself are not you, right? Like none of these things are actually you, right? It's like, oh yeah, it's like, well, you're not your blackness, right? You're not your whiteness, right? So you're not your maleness, right? You're not your femaleness, right? You're not your let's see, you're not your millennialness, right? You're not your Zoomerness or your Gen Xerness, right? All of these things would describe aspects of yourself, but they do not define you. What you are, the only thing you can be, funny enough, is you are a body that is alive. That is the hylomorphic, that is the traditional Western view of the human being, is that we are bodies ensouled, right? That's the actual error. No, that's not the error. That's the antidote to the error of the Gnostic, including the Marxist. Because the Marxist abstracts the human being. They pretend like they deal with man in his concrete life, right? But when they talk about man being part of a class, when they talk about man being bourgeoisie or proletariat, when they talk about man being class conscious, these are all abstractions, right? These are all disconnections from the actual material reality of the human being. Rather, what you are is you are a body, right? This thing that you reach towards yourself. You can put your hand on your chest or your arm, like that thing is you. Right? You're not a soul in a body. You are a body with a soul. The soul just being the vital principle, by the way. It's just that thing that makes a body alive as opposed to not alive, right? So, yeah, because like here's the thing. If you are a ghost in a machine, then no matter how useful the machine is, it doesn't matter because it's not you. But if you are the machine, and you have a ghost, then the body actually matters. a lot, and this is the error that undergirds the trans ideology, because the trans ideology is predicated under the idea that you are a ghost in the machine. So what happens if there's a disconnect between the ghost and the machine? Well, if you are first and foremost your body and not your mind, then what that means is that your mind has to be brought into alignment with the reality of your body. But if you are a mind first and a body second, i.e. a ghost in the machine, then if your mind and body are not in alignment with each other, then your body is the thing in dysfunction. So then your body has to be brought into alignment with your kind of self-perception. This is the problem. And all of these abstractions here place you outside of your body into some abstract category, in a sense alienating you from yourself. You are actually your body. Right? So, yeah, that is the traditional Western view. Well, I mean, yeah, now it's traditional, right? But it was pretty revolutionary when Aristotle concocted this idea. But this is the traditional Western view of the human being as either a body with a soul or a body-soul composite, i.e. the union of the two, but not one or the other. So I don't really like that idea of the union of the two per se, because it seems very abstract, right? Because then you're not either your body or your soul, but you are the conjunction of the two. And it has a number of implications. I would actually like to talk to potentially someone about these from the rest of the community I'm in. Might make an interesting point of conversation. But yeah, so again, and if you happen to be a body, well, then individualism necessarily follows, because you're not part of some collective. You are not part of some, again, hive mind, because you don't have any special access to anyone else's intelligence, right? You're not like an ant, where they do actually have some kind of instinctive intelligence linking each other together in a form of gestalt, system. You are, as a human being, first and foremost an individual, which can be part of collectives, but those collectives are auxiliary. They're not essential. So, yeah, individualism is the logical consequence of the idea that you are a body first, and a body with a soul, as opposed to a ghost with a machine. If you are a ghost with a machine, you can be fitted into a system of Platonic emanations, which then make you part of a collective, which the collective is actually more, real than the individual instantiations. But I'm not a Platonist, so that's not something I buy.
Essentially, it's saying that, hey, you worry about skin color and you worry about skin color. Now you guys are friends. You all share the same thoughts. You all hold the same beliefs. You all vote the same way. You all buy the same things. So stop obsessing about your identity. It's dangerous. Don't do that. And I would also say...
Counterpoint. It's not about obsessing over your identity. It's about false identification. About confusing who you are with things that you are not. If you cannot properly identify yourself, then this leads to horrifying implications and consequences, right? If I identify myself as a cell in a collective organism, right, i.e. a member of a class, then my function, my purpose is not simply in being, right? My being is not self-justifying. It is only justified in relation to the existence of the class. So I can undergo apoptosis and, the programmed cell death, right? Like be martyr to the cause. And yeah, that's just one of the functions, of that particular body. It's not particularly laudable, right? History uses and discards people kind of stuff. But, it's again, if I falsely identify with my, mind, and then my mind is an error, then it leads me to the horrifying conclusion of, hey, maybe I have to change my body, right? It's actually not that complicated. Like your identity is good. What you are is intrinsically good, but you have to know what it is that you actually are. And you are a physical entity. Right? You are a spiritual amphibian. You are a body with the capacity to interact with and explore the abstract, i.e. the spiritual. So it's not about being obsessed with your identity, but rather these people who are obsessed with their, and I quote, identity, don't know who they actually are. They have been convinced to identify falsely with things that they are not. And this is usually done for some nefarious purpose.
Stop caring about how other people perceive you. It is wildly unhealthy to obsess about recognition and acceptance and clout and compliments. Why?
I would agree here. I think she's totally right on this.
And then also, it's unhealthy to obsess about what other people say about you. Unless, of course, it's valid criticism. And I think most people can tell the difference when someone is approaching you with a genuine concern and they want to see you improve, they want to see you be successful, versus someone that's just being a jerk. And in that case, where someone's just being a jerk, this is what I would recommend. Proverbs 12:16. Fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlook an insult. Remember earlier we talked about prudence and why it's necessary, because it allows us to be careful and wise and basically exercise common sense to reason about what we're supposed to do. And if we have prudence, we know that obsessing about the mean things people say to us is a waste of time. Prudence would tell us to use that time towards improving our own lives.
I would say that is true, obviously, right? But you also need to pay attention to what people say. I had a conversation with someone one time. I'm not going to say who this was because this was, and I'm not going to say when this happened, but I had a conversation with someone who came from another country, right? And there was some ethnic tensions in that country, but there was one person, in the ethnic majority who, was being. Who was treating the guy well, right? And by ethnic majority, the leftist here would count that as a minority, even though they are the larger population, right? They're the minority in the leftist logic, right? So I'm going to use that. The minority, who's actually the majority, told the individual that I was talking to, when it was asked, "Why are you being so nice to me?" told him, "Well, we're told to be kind. We're told to be kind to cattle before we slaughter them." Right? you gotta pay attention to this stuff. The feminists, the Marxists, and all these people, they've made very clear about who they are and what they want to do to you. Believe them when they tell you who they are. Yeah. You think it's only going to happen over there? No, you let them get back into power and see what's going to happen over here, right? they they're like the free wind demons. They don't use words to communicate. They use them to deceive, right? They quote your sacred books. They quote your Constitution. They quote your, Declaration of Independence. They quote your creeds. Not because they believe them, but because they know you believe them, and that they believe that they can manipulate your behavior by manipulating how you understand your creeds. Again, believe these people when they tell you who they are, right? We are dealing with genuinely malevolent people, and they don't just stop with mean insults. Some of these people are fucking evil. Like, again, the whole Chibi Reviews. I covered Chibi Reviews when he was being harassed for his, about his suicide, about his girlfriend leaving him, cheating on him, actually, and his entire friend group abandoning him. And, I pointed out how the hoodweebs, because he dissed Boruto, they hacked his DeviantArt account. They tried to frame him for possession of child pornography. They doxed his brother's grave. And then they desecrated his brother's grave. They got him swatted. Well, the purpose of a SWAT, to be perfectly honest, is terror, right? To get someone to become either silenced through terror or to get them killed. These are not the kind of people that you can take lightly. What they say does matter. And yeah, sure, mean tweets, not something to pay attention to. But I can't help but notice that some of the people that we're in conflict with happen to kill people. Right. Aiden Paladin actually has a really good video about how the left is actually more violent than the right, and possibly is more violent than the right? But they're also just more incompetent at the violence, right? So there's a number of cases where they try to be violent, but they fail to get the desired damage they seek to perform. But, sometimes they get caught before they can do anything, but they're still planning to do terrible things, right? They're still actively planning in these cases to actually do to commit these crimes. And just like with extremists on the right, extremists on the left, not everyone who plans something goes through with it on the left. So again, we have an increase in like violent behavior on the left that actually gets performed. We have an increase of violent behavior that has been caught but not performed. There is almost certainly an increase in violent behavior that just hasn't been acted out yet. So yeah, this was made, to be fair to her, 3 years ago. Actually, that's more than 3 years ago. Holy crap! Hold on, show less. That's just 3 years ago. But anyway, so so yeah, things have changed since then. But we like to say that the things that happen online aren't real. It doesn't stop you from getting fired from your job because someone doxed your employer and then made false complaints about you. Doesn't stop people from finding out where you live and trying to kill you. Doesn't stop any of this shit. Doesn't stop people from sending cops to your house to get you murdered. Again, just because it happens online doesn't mean it's not real. In fact, sometimes things that happen online have very severe consequences, including potentially getting you debanked, which is a thing that's happened to a couple people. So, I would be very careful about this idea that it's just online, go away. You need to use prudence, because sometimes something that happens online has very real-world consequences.
Working towards the goals that we want to achieve instead of worrying about something like that. Same thing goes for spending all of your money on things to have social status. Prudence tells us that's a waste of time, that is bad with your money, stop doing that.
But we do need prudence, yes.
Anyway, that sums up everything I wanted to say. So if you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please do me a solid and hit that like and subscribe button. And of course, if you have a suggestion for a future video or topic you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments below. My name is Gothix, and I will see you next time. Bye! Thanks for watching. If you want to keep my grift going, consider picking up some official merch by visiting nosisnos.com/Gothix or joining my locals community at gothix.locals.com for more content. As always, you can help amplify my message by giving this video a thumbs up and by sharing it online with your friends. Until next time.
So, yeah, I think that this is... Okay, I didn't see that coming. So yeah, long story short, I do believe that this is I think this is, especially considering it's 3 years old, I think it's a good video. That being said, I hope that y'all have noticed, again, the difference in quality of life depicted as, like, standard for, like, a black family at the time versus now. And I hope you consider which group it is, which ideological lens it is that sought to destroy that, to take it away from people. And that to remember that they did this for a purpose, to instrumentalize an entire group, right? Again, the whole purpose of doing this was to turn the black population into a essentially subservient voter base, right? One that could never leave the ideological plantation that was, made to ensnare it. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting that, during the era of Jim Crow, families were stronger in the black community than they are now. Really gets the fucking, really activates the almonds, doesn't it? So, again, I'm gonna just say, remember what what these dialecticians, what these leftists, and it's not just the leftists, it's also like the people on the quote-unquote right, the neocons, right, who cooperate with these people because they actually are Hegelians themselves, and their vision of the future isn't that different. So remember what these people took from you. So all I gotta say, because I already covered the Native Americans, and now here's a taste of what they took from the black community. Y'all have a lovely day. I'm going to head out and drink some water.